Welcome to Anatomy. We're going to be talking about the cellular level of organization. We just finished with the chemical level of organization, talking about some important organic molecules and other things. So now it's time to actually dive into the cellular level of organization. Our first slide is our goals. We should, by the end of this lecture, be able to list the main points in cell theory, describe the chief structural features of the cell membrane, describe the organelles of a typical cell and give their specific functions, summarize the process of protein synthesis, describe the various transport mechanisms used by cells, and relate this to the transmembrane potential, and finally describe the cell life, mitosis, and cellular differentiation. This is a lot. This is very similar to the goals that I wrote down myself in our chapter tracker, but that's what it came with. Here we go. Section 1, an introduction to cells. Cells are life. One of the definitions of life is that if it's living, it must be made of cells. A little narrow, maybe, but that is a biological definition of life. So if it's got a cell and it's alive. Cells are totally cool. Basically, they're the building blocks of all plants and animals. Cells are produced by the division of pre-existing cells, so a cell always comes from another cell. Science has yet to make a cell from nothing. In fact, that is so far away that only God can do it. Cells are the smallest units that perform all vital physiological functions. So they're the smallest unit that can live. Each cell membrane maintains homeostasis at the cellular level. That means inside the cell, things are cool and stable. If the cell ceases to be cool and stable, it dies. Homeostasis at higher levels reflects combined coordinated action of many cells put together. Sure, I'll go back. Let's stay here for another 30 seconds. Here we go. 30 seconds. Check it out. There are different kinds of cells in the body. This is just a basic view of the cells that you can have in the body. You've got smooth muscle cells. Notice the shape is long, and when you contract, it becomes wider and fatter. Slender. That's right. You've got bone cells that kind of branch out and make hard crystal structures for support. You've got blood cells, an oocyte, that's a woman's egg. You've got the sperm. Check it out how small the sperm is. You've got a neuron in the brain. This is one of the most amazing cells, in my opinion. Hundreds, sometimes thousands of connections for each a cell. In fact, it's been said that if you could count all of the possible circuits in the brain, you would probably have a number like 1 times 10 to the, 80th power or more. Keep in mind that all of the known particles in the universe is estimated to be 1 times 10 to the 16th power. Incredible potential in the brain. All the atoms in the universe. So, lots.
Wait, so there's only 1 times 10 to the 16th atoms in the universe?
If I may have the number slightly off, but yes.
That's like, I would think this room has that many.
No, absolutely not. Not that many. Remember, each time you add a number to the power, it goes by 10. So, right.
I would assume there's at least like a quadrillion.
I believe so, yes. This is relative size.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So cells lining the intestinal tract, those are a specific type of cell that aren't found anywhere else?
That's right, a specific type of cell that performs a specific function that isn't found anywhere else. You see that the form of the cell actually gives you a clue to its function. Big fat globule for energy storage. Here you've got a little hair-like fingers that project into the intestine to absorb food. Neurons making connections, blood, small, transport things around, lots of nutrients for a developing baby, and so on and so forth. Cells are awesome. They make our world. The study of cells is called cytology. And the human body contains both somatic and sex cells. Somatic means body. Sex means, well, sex cells having exchange of genetic information. Check it out. Here's a basic cell. We call it a representative cell because it has most of the features you're going to find on all kinds of cells. wow, we're going to learn about all these different parts, but just get a feel for it. A cell is like a factory. A cell is like a self-contained unit that does everything necessary for life. Just a real quick rundown. We have cilia here that help with motion and absorbing nutrients. We have lysosomes, which help in disposal of waste and transport of products to the outside of the body. And we have the nucleus. This is where all the main information is stored and transmitted from the genetic code. And we have stuff like the mitochondria, which produce energy for the cell. We'll learn about the other ones later, but this is what a cell generally looks like. Okay, so what the centriole does is it acts as a spindle, like the hub of a bicycle wheel, and the spokes that come out are what lines up the chromosomes when the cell splits into two. So it aids in cell division. Good. Andrew.
If you were to look at this at an electromagnetic microscope level, would you be able to see these in particular structures?
You would. It would be black and white, and you'd have to use a computer to color them in, but you'd be able to see these structures.
Right.
Yeah.
Why would it be black and white if in real life it's like red?
Well, in real life, it's not like this. In real life, it'd probably be all one color, clear and transparent. But we've colored them in to help you see what's going on.
What makes your skin like brown?
The brown in your skin actually comes from cells called melanocytes. A melanocyte has all of these parts of the cell in it, and its function is to produce a pigment or a dye that makes you brown. My melanocytes are dying randomly over my body, and that's why I've kind of got white patches around my eyes and other places I'm not going to show you. Your melanocytes are not as vigorous or as plentiful as maybe Kevin's. Kevin's got a lot stronger population and representation.
So what, like a bone cell, what would make the bone cell white instead of transparent? Because the bone is white.
Okay, so cells are not a particular color per se. It's the product and structure of cells put together that make the color. For example, blood is red because of the iron in the hemoglobin in the red blood cells.
So a single blood cell is transparent.
No.
It's not in the group.
A single blood cell itself, these organelles don't have a specific color.
Oh.
It's what the product of the cell is that makes the color.
So why did they choose these colors?
Just so you could understand. Let's move on. All right, so a typical cell is surrounded by extracellular fluid, which is the interstitial fluid of the tissue. And it has an outer boundary called the cell membrane or plasma membrane. Basically what this means is that cells live in water, and there's always a little bit of fluid outside of them, and there's always some exchange going on. That's why, well, never mind that's why. So we're going to start talking about the plasma membrane now. The cell membrane. This is totally cool. Basically, what the cell membrane does is it maintains physical isolation, it regulates the exchange with the environment, and it helps with structural support. The cell membrane is the cell. It is the border. It is the guardian. It is the difference between cell and non-cell. Anything that comes into the cell has to come through the membrane. Everything that leaves has to go out of it. Oh, let's go back. Go ahead. So, let's take a look at a typical cell membrane. This is wild and cool. Let me just explain a few things that are happening here. Remember from our last chapter, we learned about phospholipids.
Yes.
A phospholipid had 3 carbons in a row, and it had 2 fatty acid chains, and one group that was a phosphate group that lived up here. The cell membrane itself is made up of countless numbers of phospholipids. You'll notice that it's a double layer. So you've got one layer here on top, and you've got one layer here on bottom. What's happening is the phosphate group, which is hydrophilic, moves towards the water on the outside of the cell and on the inside of the cell. And the tail, which is hydrophobic, blocks everything else. So it forms a barrier between the inside and the outside of the cell.